Due to the Fire Emblem series having lasted for more than 25 years, it's come a very long way from its highly obscure beginnings on the NES, and as such, specific entries have crucially impacted the property's evolution and played a key role in elevating this franchise to the level of relevance it holds today. Whether it be Mystery of the Emblem continuing the story of Marth, Path of Radiance making the jump to 3D, or Awakening being the one to pull Fire Emblem's foot out of the grave. However, for the western part of the world, the game that arguably made the biggest splash was none other than Blazing Sword, for being the first time players got to officially experience the series overseas. No, Smash Bros. Doesn't count. Naturally, an event so significant in Fire Emblem history has facilitated FE7 to stockpile exceptional praise and sales figures, even if the term overrated seems to follow it like the plague in this day and age. Don't get too upset, little guy. Ocarina of Time knows exactly how you feel. Nevertheless, I just so happen to love this game, so much so that I've let's played it twice. Yes, that is a shameless plug. And as such, I felt like discussing my favourite part of every Fire Emblem game, the characters. Unfortunately, I feel a list like this would be noticeably biased and predictable if it all stems from my experience. Therefore, I require the assistance of someone who can make this countdown feel much more honest.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Honest Biggums, and I know, my name just rolls right off the tongue, doesn't it? Anyway, my channel is mostly known for doing game reviews, however I do plan to branch out and do other things, this being one of them. So I want to give a big thank you to Blazing Knight for having me on board for this, should be fun.
The pleasure is all mine, Biggums.
Even though Blazing Blade was the first Fire Emblem game released outside of Japan, this was actually the 7th game that I've played, which is funny considering that this is the 7th game in this series. And I was initially rather reluctant to boot this baby up since Fire Emblem 6 left a bit of a bad taste in my mouth. Thankfully, after playing through the entire game, I have no regrets, and I look forward to seeing which of our Alivian allies left a lasting impact worthy of the heroes of legend.
Now, Biggums and I have to stress that this list is purely down to our opinions, so if you didn't like these characters or felt certain individuals got overlooked, that's fine, you have every right to feel whichever way. However, when it comes to unit performance, we will objectively outline each entity's overall proficiency in addition to our own time spent using them. Though, this isn't a list of the statistically best units in the game, just our personal favourites.
On top of that, the combatants that will be featured on this countdown are a case of Blazing Knight and myself coming to a mutual agreement on their places, as there were many faces we fought over reading their inclusion, though rest assured, no blood was spilled.
Also, we will be addressing major plot developments that take place over the course of the game, so spoiler warning for those who haven't played it. And with all that cleared up, I believe it's time for Biggums and I to commemorate those responsible for representing Fire Emblem for the first time outside of Japan, again not counting Smash, along with facilitating every game afterwards to follow in its footsteps. And bearing in mind just how big Fire Emblem has become, I think they made a strong first impression. Raven. Oh boy, I can already feel the angst meter beginning to build. Given that Raven is not exactly the friendliest of faces and fails to embody the purest of motivations, give it time and we'll eventually have enough angst for a chaos blast.
Can we not talk about that game, please?
Sorry. In spite of his stick-in-the-mud insolence, I admire Raven as one of the coolest beings in Blazing Sword that, while a bit typical upon reflection, I summarised to be prudently well written, in addition to a unit that knew how to kick all kinds of ass. In fact, he's so badass, heroes let him have the same weapon as Linus, and that thing fucking hurts! Raven's initial role in Blazing Sword is that of an enemy unit, so naturally it takes a bit of convincing to get him to join the group's cause, made possible thanks to his sister Priscilla, God bless you. However, Raven isn't a mere sellsword.
That he isn't, though for what it's worth, his story I feel is a bit of a cliche, as he was previously known as Lord Raymond of Cornwall until apparently it was destroyed by Ostia for corruption. With his pride in shambles, he dedicates his life to seeking revenge on the family of Ostia, thus setting his sights on Lord Hector during the recapturing of Castle Kalin. Raven joins your group about halfway through the game with the hopes of getting close to Hector to strike him down when he least expects it. However, amidst all the conflicts that plagued Alive, he ends up befriending Hector and is even offered to help rebuild Cornwall to its former glory. And I must say, I think Raven has a very interesting story, and he is one of many of the characters in the game with a sizable sense of development.
Major fragments of his character progression are displayed through his supports, which I found to be thoroughly engaging. Priscilla and Lucius host my favourite conversations, as they both serve to outline each occupant's respective backstories and how past events affected them all. Eventually, they succeed in getting through to Raven and enlighten him to the error of his ways, going so far as to hint at Lucius becoming a future spouse, and the best part is he can pass off as either. The remaining supports, I don't feel comparing qualitative value due to the exchange being primarily played up for laughs. However, I can't deny their level of amusement and showcase Raven's human side instead of just being an ass. Thankfully, Raven's unfortunate social standing is forgiven due to his battle prowess, despite being not as objectively good as his reputation has garnered. What I mean is that Raven truthfully has several noticeable strengths, with good bases, hard mode bonuses, a very strong growth spread, and promotion that grants him access to axes, enabling him to be a very powerful combatant. However, his problem lies in his lack of utility. Unlike mounted units and healers, Raven is restricted to purely engaging the enemy, and from the start he is bogged down by sword and footlock problems, as well as crippling constitution, granting him the rank of a good unit, just not the very best in the game.
One thing is for certain though, he is not the guy you want to mess with in close quarters combat. Think you're safe against him with a lance? Think again! Raven will rip that lance out of your hand and shove it up your ass. Okay, he doesn't actually do that for the record, but given his personality, he totally would.
In retrospect, Raven is relatively straightforward concerning both his character and unit performance, but in spite of his limitations, we felt he contained voluminous remarkable factors and is one of FE7's more popular characters for such reasons.
I guess all the angst in the world can be forgiven when countless enemies fall before you.
Are you certain about that? Cause it sure as hell didn't work for Shadow.
Again, can we not talk about that game?
Urk. Blazing Sword to this day is one of the most prevalent Fire Emblem games and hosts such a revered cast of characters, yet it's undoubtedly privy to having a sum of under-the-radar entities, case in point being Urk.
Honestly, I believe the term solid is the best way to describe Urk in just about every category. Though he's not the very best character in the game, let alone the very best unit, he has a manifold of qualities that stop him from being at the bottom of the barrel at the same time.
Oh, absolutely, and I genuinely feel he can do no wrong. Except when it comes to picking his employers. Seriously dude, Sarah's making Maribel look like a saint.
Wretched beast!
Urk is a singularity that is frequently ignored in accordance with his reserved nature and only really gets involved in the story thanks to Sarah's constant nagging. So at first I didn't think much of him, though I do admire his loyalty to his employers.
He's a solemn and intellectual young man who is deeply devoted to his studies. He despises distractions, especially when they come from her. Urk is a character that I would summarize to be just. It's clear that he's an introvert and doesn't particularly care for human interaction, and it doesn't exactly help that Sarah's a little bit annoying.
Adore me!
Fuck off! That being said, though solitude is his personal preference, his interactions with the likes of Nino and Priscilla make it clear that he's a very selfless squire and is capable of displaying considerable tentativeness too. Plus, he does yearn for solace with others and is even flabbergasted with the amount of affection Louise exhibits towards him. Though to be honest, if a woman like Louise started to get friendly with me, I'd be at a loss for words too.
What I find heartwarming about his story is that he can learn to love people, even the ones that drive him crazy and distract him, and depending on which female character he supports with, he could end up getting married and live the rest of his life in peace.
Lest we not forget his relationship with Sarah, which I find to be remarkably over the top and almost corny. Though ultimately it did make for a lot of humorous banter between the two, and by the A support, they come to the realization that each one acts as a way to balance the other out and create a nice middle ground. On the subject of middle ground, that's essentially the ideal summarization regarding Urk's objective performance, as first and foremost, he is a good unit, having well-rounded bases, solid growths across the board, and a class line that though lacking in movement and bulk, has strong offense and staff utility upon promotion, plus his availability is good and can gain a stark level up in Lin mode. Now compared to these three magic users, he lacks the offensive potency of Canis and Lucius, and stat-wise doesn't compare to Pent, then again not many units do. However, he doesn't suffer from Canis' speed issues or Lucius' fragility, plus Pent doesn't join until much later, so until then he's a perfect stand-in and I feel is a solid pick regardless of playstyle.
Okay, I get it. Urk is not exactly the best mage ever introduced into the series. Personally, I think that honor goes to Soren from Path of Radiance. Yeah, I know, objectivity and all that, but hear me out for just a second. Urk for me was a bit of a tank in his own right. He had a lot of health thanks to his growths, and decent defense. Not stupendous, but decent. All this toppled together with good magic and res stats, and you've got yourself a mage that can hold his own pretty darn well, at least until the final few chapters of the game.
You've got a point since I tend to favour Lucius over Urk, and on Hector hard mode I eventually dropped him for Pent, but I always appreciate his early game contributions and feel he deserves more appreciation. Sure, he's by no means the best, but trust me when I say, there's a lot worse out there. Lucius. So even though Urk made this top 10, until recently I didn't pay him any mind primarily because of this guy.
Wait, Lucius is a dude? Come on, look at his portrait. You can't tell me that that isn't feminine.
Yes, well, after dealing with Libra and Forest, I thought you'd be used to this.
So did I, but alas, life still manages to surprise you.
Lucius may have a very soft and feminine appearance, but underneath that beautiful exterior, he's one of the most tragic troopers in the game and an absolute beast of a unit that remains to this day my favourite light magic user and go-to mage for Fire Emblem 7. Yes, even more so than Pent. I'm not willing to wait that long.
Lucius makes his first appearance in Chapter 7 during Lynn's story arc, and later reappears in Chapter 16 or 17 depending on which mode you're playing.
As is expected of a monk, Lucius is an astonishingly sweet man who's about as gentle as a heron, guaranteeing that I would ascertain a soft spot for him. But I simultaneously find him to be substantially interesting due to how frequently he displays a surprising amount of stubbornness and is not hesitant to put people in their place, which I feel makes him more realistic, especially after being put through so much hardship during his life.
Lucius's father was a famous mercenary for hire but was killed by a thief in front of him when he was about 3 years old. His mother also eventually died of sickness soon afterward. Lucius then took the dagger that served as his father's murder weapon as a keepsake, and depending on whether or not you use the support options, Lucius can either become a mercenary and travel with Raven, or open up an orphanage for children who suffered the same fate to his own. And I find it cool that his ending can take a drastic turn depending on who influenced him during his journey.
That's not all, as he also discovers the truth behind Sarah's upbringing, and even the knowledge that Renault killed his father, allowing for both Lucius and his support partner's backstories to be fleshed out, and make for one of my favourite set of interactions in the game, which I won't lie, is not an easy feat. What is an easy feat for this man of God is the ability to send his adversaries to the afterlife, as Lucius is also an objectively good unit, about on par with Ark I'd say, concurrently embodying greater strengths but crippling weaknesses.
Lucius is a monk, and a very powerful one at that. His bases and growths focus on speed, magic, and res, with a whopping 60% growth rate to the latter two stats. His major drawback though is, defense, as you'd probably expect. Like, my god, it is horrible. But as long as you're careful, you really won't have to worry about that. Once he promotes though, he is certainly an ally that you want on your team, as he can wield stats at a C rank level that can inflict status ailments like Berserk, with his high magic skill further increasing the likelihood of it happening.
His availability is the same as Raven, though Limbo can give him a bit of a boost, and is also one of the few light magic users in the game which grants him a sort of niche if you will. As far as magic units in Blazing Sword go, I'm a bigger fan of Lucius's build, as from start to finish this magical monk just destroyed everyone that got in his way, and my god did having stars make me love him even more. And it's thanks to both this and his excellent characterization that Lucius is my absolute favourite light magic user in all of Fire Emblem. Though whether or not Free House has something to say about that is a discussion for another time.
Hopefully sometime soon, as we know next to nothing about that game.
Indeed, and I'm beginning to get very worried. Hawkeye. Berserkers are a rather rare class in Fire Emblem, so whenever they're available, their destructive force often certifies them a place in my team, which is precisely where Hawkeye comes in.
I always thought he was a bow user.
Wrong context, dude. Putting his absolutely amazing sprite aside, Hawkeye, like Urk, was a warrior I didn't think much of at the outset, but after breaking through his tough exterior, I discovered a truly fascinating soul and a ferocious fighter that made certain sections of Hector hard mode much more manageable, because fuck you, Genesis.
Hey, what do you got against the classic Sega system?
Again, wrong context.
Hawkeye's story is very mysterious. He doesn't really talk all that much, but he harbors extreme loyalty to both Louise and Pent. His history remains relatively unknown, but it is speculated that ever since his childhood, he's been training to protect the Nevada desert.
It's also interesting to note that he's the father of Binding Blade bow user Igren. Ah, I see what you did there. Now, Hawkeye I always perceived to be pretty cool, and I like the type of aura his presence gave off, but he was primarily a silent sentinel, so for many playthroughs, I paid him no heed. Eventually, I decided to see what Mr. Muscle was all about, and my god, did he take the phrase quality over quantity to heart. During his conversations, Hawkeye remains the introvert he's known to be, yet he was capable of displaying such wisdom and serenity that added an abundance of charm to his character. Hawkeye I witnessed to express a great sense of optimism and gratitude towards everything in his life, and a lot of his words really hit home with the other characters.
These supports often remind him of his daughter, and it certainly helps us get to know him a bit better. I mean, that's what the supports are there for, but since he goes silent after 4-fanged offense and only has 3 conversational partners, 2 of which can only reach beast support, a little bit more screen time would have been okay.
Thankfully, Hawkeye's actions speak louder than words, as objectively speaking, Hawkeye is a good unit, but not top tier, being overall worse than Geit, especially because of those hard mode bonuses.
You don't get him until later in the game, but holy hell is this dude a beast. Hawkeye is a berserker with lots of HP, like seriously, 50 hit points? God damn. Strength, skill, and defense. So basically, not only can this man take a lot of hits, but is also perfectly capable of dishing out the pain.
Thanks to his comprehensive build, Hawkeye has an extensive amount of versatility. However, he falls short due to being an axe and footlocked unit, but has A ranks in the weapons and his growths are okay, though speed issues will continually persist him, even by FE7 standards, in addition to some accuracy problems. Overall, though there are better options out there, Hawkeye has always been potent whenever deployed, and now thanks to my sudden realization about his character, is one of my favourite units in the game. Plus he gets bonus points for that badass sprite. Seriously, it is so fucking cool! Nino. Once again, my love for all things cute weighs heavily on my decision making.
Then how come Sakura isn't one of your favorite Fates characters?
Shut up! Fortunately, there's much more to Nino than just being adorable, as I observed her to be one of the most terrifically transcribed characters in the game that it would be a crime to exclude her from this list. Granted, statistically speaking she's pretty trash, but I've trained plenty of Ninos and they've all turned out awesome. And given my record for utilizing bad units, this shouldn't surprise any of you.
Nino might be a sweet little angel, however, her story is very sad. Unbeknownst to her, Nino's family was murdered when she was a baby, and she was raised by Sonia, one of the members of the Black Fang. Throughout her childhood, Nino was convinced that Sonia was her blood mother despite how neglectful and full of hate that she was. Nino's sole purpose in life was nothing more than impressing her mother enough so she could finally get a little bit of affection. Needless to say, she doesn't respond too well to the news about her family's fate.
It is highly unfortunate to bear witness to the copious amounts of hardships that befall this little one, but fear not, as once the ordeal is over, she's able to live a much happier life and make friends with those in Eliwood's army. Nino's conversations vary greatly between each individual and make the exchanges far more personal in my opinion, whether it be learning about the magical lore of Alive from Urk, addressing her backstory with Florina and just how much she loves her brothers, to making someone as cold and ruthless as Jafar fall in love with her. Nino's got variety down pat when it comes to topics of discussion. I also like how despite her cuteness, she's still a child at the end of the day, and has a knack for being far too energetic and quick to let her emotions get the better of her, which I feel makes her more realistic given that she's only 14.
Isn't she a little bit young to be fighting in this war?
Perhaps, but she's only 3 years younger than Hector. What? Actually, she might just be too young for battle considering the fact that as much as I love her, Nino is from a factual standpoint, a terrible unit and one of the worst in the game. The absolute worst though? Probably not since Carla exists.
You need to clean up your act.
Nino has many problems, but the three biggest factors are: A, her bases are very low. B, she joins very late into the game when most units will be promoted. C, she is outclassed by literally every other magic user in the game, making her an otherwise pointless addition to the army. Fire Emblem Heroes this ain't, little one.
Ugh, no way!
Despite this though, Nino is a very strong character both physically and mentally, and is definitely one of my favorite units to have on the front line, as dedicating the time to raising her usually pays off because she becomes very powerful. Nino specializes in magic, speed, res, and luck, along with having exceptional growth rates that mostly average around 50 to 55% across the board. Plus, if done properly, she can be ready to go for promotion by the end of her side quest, though this can be difficult because she lacks defense.
At this point, I don't think there's much else to say about Nino. Her popularity speaks for herself, and though statistically speaking she sucks, that won't stop her from doing her very best, and I just can't say no to someone so cute. A problem that persists throughout many Fire Emblem games.
So I take it you like Faye as well, since she's rather cute?
You're funny. Jafar. Recruiting enemy units is a staple of Fire Emblem, and the majority of the time they'll either have some sort of beef with the main heroes, are backed into a corner and forced to fight against their will, or are out for blood because they need the money. That's kind of shallow reasoning, don't you think?
Hey man, times are tough and those bills aren't gonna pay for themselves.
Jafar is a far more extreme circumstance given his involvement in the narrative and capacity for killing, which made him all the more awesome on the battlefield and a true joy to witness his redemption arc come full circle, which time and again has proven to work wonders. The Angel of Death that is Jafar, though playable from chapter 26 onward, appears conspicuously early on in the story, where he demonstrates just how deadly he is by straight up murdering Layla and is later summoned by Nagal to halt the group's escape. A smart plan, though I still think Marcus could have taken him.
Not to be confused with Aladdin's Jafar, he's an assassin with one hell of a bad attitude. His story is not exactly something that you've never seen before. I mean, he's dark and mysterious, he's an introvert with really not a whole lot to say. And I mean, that is until he is rescued by Nino. This small event shows him that love and compassion is probably not as bad as he was raised to believe. And if you unlock the A support between him and Nino, they actually get married and start a family. Jafar is a shining example that nobody is too far gone.
Oh, I disagree. This series has some truly irredeemable scumbags, though you do have a point, Biggums, as Blazing Sword holds nothing back in regards to just how dangerous Jafar is. So to see his heart begin to soften over the course of the game and turn over a new leaf makes the transition feel fathoms more meaningful, and has thus become one of my favourite character arcs in Fire Emblem, right up there with Jill's racism and Takami's corruption. Jafar certainly isn't one for conversation, but his supports, while very light on actual dialogue, I feel have a lot of heart behind them, what with instances that recall Layla's last words to Matthew, and requesting Legault to look over Nino, add small touches of humanity to him which I love. I also love his performance as a unit, though just like with Raven, he tends to get far too much credit for what his objective performance accumulates to. Jafar does constitute considerable positives and is the very first assassin in the Fire Emblem series, as previously Thieves could not promote, and trust me, that sucked! This dispatcher's base stats are excellent, along with an A rank in swords and the only unit in the game with a skill, that being Silencer, which is an automatic instant kill. Plus he's one of the few green units in the game that isn't a complete moron.
His strength growth is pretty atrocious and his defense is bad, but he's able to make up for it with high skill and high speed. It's very likely that this man is going to kill his target in one turn, and that's just because he's so dark. I have dubbed him to be the Dodge Lord of the Sith, and seriously, this guy rarely takes a hit. Unfortunately, it doesn't help that he cannot steal items from his opponents, and still has the downsides of being a sword and foot-locked unit, which in Fire Emblem 7 is a big no-no. Not to mention, he only has a strength cap of 20, and that is shit.
Overall, I'd say he's a bit like Hawkeye, an ideal filler unit, but not the best in the game, though whenever I use him, he literally ripped everyone to pieces and made the failed contract otherwise pointless. Fire Emblem is no stranger to taking soulless individuals and breathing new life into them, something I greatly admire about this franchise, and I feel Jafar's turn from the Angel of Death to Nino's Guardian Angel simply adds more fuel to the fire in my heart. Florina. I've always been incredibly fond of the Pegasus Knight class, as they're very often great units, and I'm a big fan of most of the characters who represent this class type. After all, it's home to my best girl. FE7 has, in my opinion, one of the strongest sets of feminine flyers in the series, and though I personally favour Fiora, there's no denying just how great the baby of the bunch Florina is, and we can't help but love just how precious she can be. I mean, she squeaks in Fire Emblem Heroes. And that's adorable.
Florina is one of those characters whose disposition makes her someone that you want to see develop, and thankfully Blazing Blade did us just that. Her story has her start off as a timid young lady, and all she wants to do is help out her friend Lindis, but her main weakness is her unrivaled shyness around men. Luckily, the regular story progression and support show her overcoming this anxiety of the opposite sex. While in the end she's only fighting to protect Lindis, deep down she knows exactly what she's fighting for and takes her role very seriously.
That she does, though I find it a little hard to take her seriously, as I felt Florina to be a bit cliche as far as her characterization goes and just slightly over the top at times. However, I can't deny just how much charm she contains, and I do like how most of her interactions either flesh out her backstory or work towards becoming the person she wishes to be. Not to mention, her friendship with Lyn is very sweet, and I love the family dynamic she has with her other sisters, so much so that I'm really surprised she wasn't an S to begin with. Well, it's a good thing she wasn't, as while Florina may cower in the presence of a penis, nothing can hold her back on the battlefield, especially because in FE7, archers are shit. The reason for this being that Florina is arithmetically one of the best units in the game, easily top 5 material, primarily due to her fantastic class line and high availability.
Florina, like most Pegasus Knights, is very fragile. Her defense is abysmal, but she makes up for it with high res, along with decent attack power. Not to mention, as a Pegasus Knight, she's able to travel much farther than other units and scale any type of terrain, making her ideal for rescuing units in a pinch. And once she promotes, she can be one of the most useful characters in the game.
Now, starting out, her bases are a little low, but she's not very hard to train along with a good growth spread. Not to mention, if trained on Lyn mode, she can be downright disgusting, making her the overall strongest flying unit in the game, to the point where Marcia and Pala would blush. All the more reason as to why I feel she's the best Pegasus Knight in Blazing Sword, though for what it's worth, her sisters also make for fine fighters, as if I didn't love this class enough. Hector. And here we have everyone's favourite Ostian axe-wielding aristocrat. Hector has made a name for himself as one of the most favoured Fire Emblem lords, especially in this day and age thanks to heroes, because fuck me, every form is just nuts. I can undoubtedly understand why he's so loved, for though he is far from the norm concerning his behaviour, I find him to be a breath of fresh air, in addition to an absolute powerhouse unit that lets his axe through the talking, and that thing can read you the phone book.
Do people even still use those?
In this day and age? I doubt it. Being one of the 3 lords present within Blazing Sword, Hector is the young noble of Ostia, brother to Lord Uther and Eliwood's best friend.
If I could compare Hector to any other character that I know, I would say he's pretty close to Raphael from TMNT. He's the badass of the group who doesn't take shit from nobody.
This at times conveys him to be a bit of a brute and the occasional ass. Heck, the way himself and Lynn bicker throughout the game, you'd swear they were an old married couple. Hector I discern to be a character with many flaws, however his downsides I conclude to help him feel much more grounded, as he's very much set in his ways, but is astutely aware of his impediments. That's not to say he's absent from having bountiful benefits, as despite his occasional arrogance, the loyalty he conveys to the ones he loves is downright inspiring, with himself and Eliwood probably having the best bromance in Fire Emblem, even more so than these two.
His story is mostly just about him tagging along with his buddy Eliwood, but if you play through his side of the story, he can actually marry Lindis, Florina, or Farina should you acquire an A-rank support with one of them. This introduces us to his daughter Lilina, who is quite honestly my second favorite character in Binding Blade. Hector is the type of guy who is crude, rude, and difficult to read, but he's an ally that you want on your team when things get real.
His supports I personally say are a bit of a mixed bag. I felt they were primarily played for laughs, but occasionally highlighted Hector's capacity for compassion and openness towards others. However, where he really shines is Hector mode, big shock, where he is authorized to have more screen time, the majority of which is used to further establish his unique relationship with Uther and Oswin. Plus, I felt it done a commendable job at showcasing the young lord's progression from hot-blooded meathead to a far more lenient leader. Just try not to get too under his skin, or he'll shove that axe where the sun don't shine. It's fortunate that Hector's lust for battle carries over to the battleground, as Hector is objectively speaking the best lord of the three and a good unit overall, but like Raven and Jafar, is rather overrated. I'm starting to sense a pattern with this game.
This dude is the tank of the three main lords. He is capable of withstanding plenty of hits and is able to dish out some devastating blows of his own. Unfortunately, his shortcomings are accuracy and skill, but by God, when he lands a hit, the enemy will be lucky to survive. Furthermore, I love his animation when he wields the armads. Just him slamming the axe on the ground before he wrecks the enemy is proof enough of his badassery.
Now the downside of being foot-locked along with late promotion persists in addition to low speed and poor hit rates. However, FE7 has a low speed spread on enemies, and as far as pure axe units go, Hector is the best non-promoted one in the game, and he's very useful in the first half of Hector hard mode due to the large quantity of javelin and bow users. However, Hawkeye and Geit are statistically superior. Hector is undeniably uncanny compared to what the series is used to, but I've always felt different can be a good thing, and it seems going in a different direction paid off for this general of Ostia. After all, Hero certainly seems to love you.
Feel my power!
Eliwood. Fire Emblem Lords are generally the more popular and loved characters in their respective titles, but in a game that already contains many players' first ever Fire Emblem waifu and the ultimate axe-wielding badass, it comes as no surprise that Eliwood gets shafted more times than Isaac in Smash Bros.
Dude, too soon.
While I do think Eliwood doesn't ascertain the same level of standout charisma as his peers, that doesn't take away from just how brilliant of a character I think he is, along with a unit that, while not good per se, is more than capable of holding its own. I'm sure one of these days you'll get the respect you deserve, hopefully once that remake happens, which it better! Unlike his brother-in-arms Hector, Eliwood is noticed to be more traditional for a Fire Emblem Lord, being very down-to-earth and refined, while lacking significantly standout characteristics, which I've come to conclude labels him as bland in the eyes of certain players. And while I can understand where they're coming from, I wouldn't go so far as to say he's boring or forgettable.
Eliwood is just a likable character in general. His story is all about him trying to save a life from a dire threat. He wants to save everyone, but throughout the game he realizes that he can't. As a result, he gets emotional when he fails, and I can't help but to adore his relationship with Ninian. I'll tell you what, when Eliwood was baited to kill her, I felt something, man.
In spite of Eliwood's situation getting progressively worse, he's always able to remain true to himself and constantly searches for the best in people, even some of the villains, a personality trait I greatly admire, that is further demonstrated through his relations with just about everyone. We've already established his bromance with Hector, but his supports with Lyn and Fiora are both great, exhibiting how accepting he is of them that helps to reaffirm their confidence in themselves, as well as changing their perspective on nobles. Marcus fits the role of father figure to a T, and even Harkin and Lowen outline his importance to Feria. Plus, Eliwood and Ninian have the most beautiful support conversations and are the best Fire Emblem couple. Fight me! Eliwood might be far more even-tempered than his muscle-bound blood brother, but that doesn't mean he'll hold back in battle, which won't amount to much as he's statistically a pretty average unit that's leaning more towards the bad end of the spectrum. A lot of this is to do with, once again, being sword and foot locked starting out, only made worse by his mere bases and a really late promotion, making almost all sword users a superior supplement for 3/4 of the game. Thankfully, Eliwood benefits immensely from promotion bonuses, gaining lances and mounted utility, plus he's got solid growths, and if he gains good levels early on, you'll really feel the power with this guy.
This is a character that I could depend on in a pinch. He may not crit very much, but he's more than capable of taking a hit and dishing out some pain of his own. In fact, when the enemies gang up on him, I can't help but to say, Eliwood, stop! Save some for the weaker units! His versatility increases that much more when he promotes and gains the ability to wield lances, even though I personally never use them.
Blasphemy.
Whatever, man. Ultimately, I can't deny that he's an asset to the team.
It's unfortunate yet understandable to bear witness to Eliwood's overlooked state of affairs. Yet, while some see him as dreary, I like to think of him as dignified and the best lord in the game.
Or at least he would, if not for the existence of...
Lindis. Yes, we're well aware this is a very cliche pick, but what can we say? I love Lyn, Biggums loves Lyn, a good chunk of the community loves Lyn, and Heroes loves Lyn. In fact, I think the only one that doesn't is Smash Brothers.
Again, too soon, dude. Alright, but anyway, I know what you all are thinking. How dare you? How dare you put Lindis as number 1? But before you mega nerds go crazy in the comments, just hear us out for a second.
As the situation stands, it's irrefutable to claim that Lyn is one of the most beloved characters in Fire Emblem, and though I'm sure many of you are eager to point out how little she does in the narrative or how poor her performance really is, I too find myself enamored with this Lady of the Plains, and I will always make her a mainstay on my team, because goddammit, bad units just love me, and I love them. Well, most of them. Meg, you suck! When beginning Blazing Sword for the very first time, Lyn is the first character players are initially greeted with. For this section of the game revolves around her journey, as she is now the last member of her tribe.
She lived her entire life completely unaware that she was of a noble bloodline, although this secret really couldn't be held from her forever. I love Lyn's story because it revolves around her risking life and limb and the lives of all of her allies to save a grandfather that she's never met.
I'm with Biggums on this one. I really like this part of the game as she struggles with her need for revenge as well as the prejudice towards her Sacaean heritage. Once the main story kicks in, Lyn, truth be told, doesn't really do much. Don't get me wrong, she has her shining moments and some excellent exclusive interactions with Eliwood and Hector, however I must declare that she fails to majorly impact the grand narrative. Though her lack of importance is lamentable, I feel her character makes up for it, as to me she conjugates the overall superlative collection of supports in Fire Emblem 7 that fluctuate frequently between companions.
Her interactions with the other lords shows us that she is not a woman to be trifled with, given how much she likes to bust Hector's balls. At face value, it seems that these two just can't stand one another, but by the time you achieve an A-level support for these two, you can see that their friendship is actually very close, and I love the way in which this woman is written.
On top of that, she discusses her role as a lord and how it conflicts with her heritage with Eliwood, plus they're probably the most underrated couple in Fire Emblem, helps Will to realise the error of his ways and the importance of family, showcases why herself and Florina are the best of friends, finds consolation in wrath due to their mutual heritage and life experience, and even has her revenge subplot come full circle thanks to Wallace. All of these therapy sessions add additional layers of depth to Lyn and help to make her, in my opinion, feel far more three-dimensional. It seems spending all that time standing around on the battlefield was worth it, even if it did take decades to open their mouths, thank fuck for the 3DS support system.
Tell me about it.
Speaking of standing around on the battlefield, that's something Lyn really shouldn't be doing, since the fact of the matter is, Lyn sucks. Yes, it's true, Lyn is an objectively bad unit, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. However, that doesn't make her completely worthless, as there are worse units in the game, but overall she's very far down the tier list, and probably the worst lord in Fire Emblem. Yes, even worse than Roy. At least he's in the game where being swordlocked isn't a bad thing. Lyn, despite having, I'd say, an overall solid growth scheme and decent personal weapon, suffers from the many flaws already outlined in this video. Sword and foot locked, bad base strength, very frail regardless of how good of a dodge tank she can be, the worst availability of the free lords on Eliwood and Hector mode, though for what it's worth playing on Lyn mode can make a world of difference, as well as a lame-ass promotion where she remains foot locked and only gains bows, which are at their worst in Fire Emblem 7.
Lindis is my number 1 mainly due to the fact that as she grows, she becomes increasingly hard to hit. Not to mention, she would crit all the time due to her high skill ranking. While she's not very good at taking a hit herself, she was more than capable of standing on her own 2 feet.
I second that notion, as after doing 2 Let's Plays of the game, both times Lyn was a god! Holy shit, Lyn was the ultimate powerhouse as nothing could stop this Sacaean beast, and every adversary stupid enough to face her head on was cut to ribbons so fast I might as well be playing Fire Emblem Warriors. Just look at those stats, you don't mess with shit like this. And those individuals that dared to call themselves bosses were the biggest bunch of pussies that all died between Lyn's legs. Actually, that sounds rather nice. Lundgren, pussy. Uhai, pussy. Ursula, pussy. Lloyd, pussy. Limstella, pussy. Nagal? Actually, that was Eliwood's doing, but the Dragon Boss, pussy, pussy, fucking pussy!
Well, you certainly made the best out of a bad unit.
It comes with the territory.
Well, I don't know what else I can say about Lynn to further explain why I love her so much. Yeah, I know she's not super plot important, and on average, she really can't carry her own weight.
But the way in which so many sides of her character are presented throughout the game and all the different relationships she builds with the heroes of her life make her feel to us as living and breathing as every single one of you watching this video, which is why she takes the #1 spot as our favourite character in Fire Emblem Blazing Sword. This has been Blazing Knight.
And I have been Honest Biggums.
We wish you all a great night, take care, and no matter what you think of FE7, whether it be great, good, overrated, or there's no opposing its importance to the franchise and how much the heroes of her life have kept the fire in millions of fans' hearts burning, and only time will tell if 3 houses can keep the flames within our hearts burning brighter than ever. Thank you all for watching today, we hope you had a great time and enjoyed the video. Please let us know what you thought in the comments and what are some of your favourite units in Fire Emblem 7. It goes without saying, but Honest Biggums, thank you so much for joining me on this video and helping to add that ounce of personality. It was wonderful to work with you, and if you liked him here, please check out his channel and his Honest Opinions series. In fact, he recently did a video on Blazing Sword featuring yours truly, which gives a more detailed rundown of our experiences with the game. Also, please don't forget to give this video a like, subscribe and hit that notification bell, follow me on Twitter, Discord and Nino, and if you'd like to go the extra mile and receive some nice bonuses for doing so, please consider donating to my Patreon page to help make these videos possible. Before I bid you all farewell, I want to say a massive thank you to all my patrons who help make these videos possible. It's thanks to all of your love and support that I'm able to keep running this channel and improve myself and keep making these videos coming. And I know I've said this many times, but I'll keep saying it again, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. And I'd like to give shout outs to Nate Perkins, Chaos Saberline, Justin Konovich, Karen Chowdhury, Vanessa Westfall, Vincent Clark, Midnight Castle, Patanko Fan 32, Maggie Fall, Archery, Almond, Jeremy Rediger, The Main Idea, and Faraday392. Thank you all so much, you people are the absolute best. Anyway, that's it from me, I'll see you all next time.